Hi, folks. Rick Berube here, Facebook Live with Mike Ferry. Okay, so what I wanted to say, Mike, first off, obviously you've been doing this a super long time. I mean, what, 45 years now, at least,
Correct.
right? And I met you 30, like you said last time, 30 years ago. I use your system. I still do today. We still use it. And what I want to know from you is, with all your experience and knowledge and so forth, in today's crazy world, as things are starting to open up and we're getting back, let's call it the Mike Ferry state of the real estate economy. You know how the president does State of the Union? You can do state of the real estate. What do you see happening? Where do you see it going? Help us out with that.
Well, I think first of all, it's nothing but good news because the challenges, is the inventory shortage, which is our biggest challenge today, is being somewhat lightened up by all the good agents that work for your companies and some other companies in town that are taking listings.
Right.
Because you and I have always agreed that listings are, without a doubt, the answer to the problem, especially those that are listed at the right price.
Right.
So I'm excited about all the listing agents inside your company and all the ones watching today, because they're going to make a tremendous amount of money because of that. But I think the state of the economy is very strong because the backlog of buyers that we're experiencing and seeing that are looming out there, Rick, waiting to come back for this pandemic to finally end is going to be just enormous. My concern on the other side is the fact that still a lot of agents are disengaged. This home isolation has been to say it's a challenge for people, that's an understatement. I mean, it's been a really difficult time for a lot of people. I mean, if they don't have a good sense of balance inside their own head with themselves and their family, it's a difficult time. I mean, the jokes about the fact that the number of bottles of alcohol being consumed is going up by the day. The birth rate is going to be real strong in 9 months, and the divorce rate the same. So all those kind of things because of this home isolation. So I would say that, the economy is going to be better than ever when this thing ends for the real estate industry. But I think, Rick, something that you and I have discussed in the past.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people forget that the U.S. economy is strongly based 100% on what happens in real estate. If our agents are doing their job, every time a transaction takes place, there's 7 to 10 to 12 people employed. So a listing sold or buy or sale employs 12, 15 people. So we are the heartbeat of the U.S. economy. So I think that the agents that are struggling with this pandemic need to come out of it quickly mentally and get back to work.
Yeah.
Because we are the employers in this economy, whether it be a listing taken or a listing sold. So I think the green light is on, and the green screen behind you is the perfect light to have on.
Yeah, what you were thinking, I was thinking, I know some agents that if social distancing was an Olympic event, they'd be gold medalists. And that's not a good deal right now. It's time to come out of the woodwork. And you said something that I learned this early on from you, like in 1985, 86. But it's always been challenged. It's always been confusing to me why, especially the newer agents, you can't teach them that listings are where it's at.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you think that? Why do you think when they come in the business, they have a hard time understanding? My first broker said, "You don't list, you won't last," and I've always remembered that, and that's a good saying. But why do you think they have a hard time seeing that? What is that?
Well, I think the perception, Rick, is that it's easier to put a buyer in the car and show them a home. They forget about the fact that you still have to make a presentation, handle objections, close the sale, which is the same process on listing. But see, here's the catch, and you and I have talked about this many times. Buyers are always looking for an agent. Sellers are not.
Right.
So if you're working in an office and you're taking floor time or open house, or you're buying leads off the internet, those are potential buyers looking for a good person. But agents that are listing property have to go find the seller. So one, we have to go find them, and one, we hope to be found. And those are two totally different premises. And I think most agents feel that putting a buyer in the car happens to be easier, and it's not. It's just as much work to get a buyer to buy as a seller to sell. The difference is the sellers are not looking for us. We have to go find them. And that's why I think most agents, especially the newer ones, that you and I have experienced will take that. I call it the path of least resistance until they run into a problem. Then it's a tough time.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it goes back to that rejection thing. You know,
Yeah.
when you have a buyer and you take them out, you become buddies, pals, friends. When you're on the phone, you know, I hear get my teeth kicked in, or the door slammed on me, and you know, it's tough to teach agents right from the beginning that it really is about how you're doing it when it comes to prospecting. Would you agree? Like, you know, it's kind of like people are very intuitive. If I go out door knocking like I'm doing something wrong, people are very helpful. They will treat me like I'm doing something wrong. But if I go out there like this is normal, natural, I do this all day, every day, then I get that kind of response, right?
That's right. Well, you know, we've all been taught that, you know, the words we use, the body language, etc., is affecting the responses we get. And you know, it's pretty old-fashioned to you and I to know that the structure of what we say controls the response we get. I can say, "My name is Mike. Do you want to sell your home?" On the phone or at the door, they're probably going to say no. "My name is Mike. When do you plan on moving?" Changes the structure of the question, which opens up the conversation. Then, with the smile on our face and the energy and attitude we have, we're always going to get a better response than if we're worried, upset, nervous, you know, about the prospect we're going to talk to. So it's you know, Earl Nightingale taught us years ago, it's probably 90% attitude and mindset and 10% the rest. So I wish we could insert a chip into new agents' head to allow them to understand what you and I just said.
Yeah, it's the open-ended question. You know, finish your sentence on a downswing, and then it compels them to answer. That little pattern that Matthew, that I actually learned it from Matthew years ago, it's really helpful when you're prospecting. But you just said Earl, and I just, you know, I got obviously turned on Earl Nightingale when I was with you for many years, and he does. I don't know if you've seen this, but he does a book report on Think and Grow Rich. It's about 45 minutes long. It's on YouTube. It's really. I just listened to it again yesterday. I listen to that probably twice a year. It's that good.
Yes. Well, you mentioned that book, Think and Grow Rich, which is kind of like a Bible for you and I and how we've always patterned our career. But I've read that book over 100 times in my life. And I haven't shared this with you, but for my 70th birthday, which is now 5 years ago,
Right.
Sabrina, my wife, actually bought me a first edition copy of Think and Grow Rich signed by Napoleon Hill,
Wow.
which is it's a prized possession. Let's put it this way. I never open it and read it because it's under lock and key, but I have a good copy to read all the time because it's, you know, it's what we put into our heads is what comes out of our mouth in terms of how we think and what we say. And what you've always done is what I've always done is try to put the right things in so the right things come out.
Yeah, so true. And people don't. I think a lot of agents don't realize that being in good physical shape is a process. Being in good mental shape, they both have to be in your schedule. You have to have time to do them every day, and you've got to schedule them in. Otherwise, it's like saying, you know what, it's not that important to me.
That's right. 100%.
So, okay, so let's say I'm an experienced agent, and you know I want to get out of the gate, take it to the next level. What are the 2 or 3 most important things you tell them in today's environment right now?
They have to deal with their database more than ever. They have to work to expand that database because you and I know that if a person's doing 25 going to 50, as an example, at least 40% of that has to come out of that database. Okay. And, you know, 40% of 50 is a pretty good percentage of the transactions. So they have to solidify, they have to build their database, they have to go back into it, eliminate the people that they honestly will never want to talk to again, and then start building that relationship with those people that are going to give them business. That's number one. Number two, I mean, they have to tighten up their schedule because everything comes down to a schedule. You know, if a schedule is effective and a schedule is really designed to create, you know, I just did a webinar a few minutes ago with a big company in Washington, D.C. And I said to the lady that was interviewing me, a great gal named Sherry, I said, you know, Sherry, what's interesting about real estate, the home schedule that agents are following today that are good is much stricter and much more productive than the schedule they may follow in the office because of all the distractions that take place in an office. You guys have great offices because I've been in almost all of them. I mean, they're beautifully designed, but they're a safe haven for an agent. It's a place to go, never do anything all day long and think you're working. But see, in this crazy time we have today, if you're working at home and you want to go to the next level, you got to be very, very explicit as to what you do for that 3 or 4 hours of productive time each day. So obviously, it's defining the database, defining the schedule, and then really working on the skills. Because you and I have always talked for years, Rick, that if a person can list 4 out of every 10 presentations, if we can get them to 6, and you and I can get anybody from 4 to 6, boy, what a difference that makes in their overall growth. That's 24 extra transactions a year right there, okay? And that's the difference between 25 and 50. So I would say third is the skills they have to define. Because you and I both know the skills of a pro are different than the skills of an amateur.
No doubt. Yeah. They practice different. They work. The perfect example I'm thinking of is Dan Mum. Dan Mum is in your coaching. He's been in your coaching now for a couple of years. I coached him early on, and then he jumped into you. This is his 5th year. He's been in the business 4 years. This is his 5th year in the business. He closed 78 last year, and he's on pace for over 100 this year. And he's the perfect example of what you just went through without having all the baggage. And, he doesn't have the big data. He's built his database. He wasn't even from here. He moved here. So he's a perfect example of all of that. And that's good stuff. Now, so being around you for a long time, do you still talk about the 10% rule when it comes to your CRM and database? Do you still believe in that?
Yes, very much so. And
I thought
the
so.
10%, the 10% rule is, for every 100 people, you should get 10 transactions, whether it be a referral or a direct transaction, if you're communicating, because that's the catch. It's so amazing. You remember Tim Wood, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And Tim Wood said something. Yeah, Tim said something one time I'll never forget. He said, Mike, you take a database of 1,000 people that an agent has, and they don't work it, they don't work it, they don't work it. What they forget is somebody else is working it. Because somebody natural, like you or I, are going to be calling, not purposely into that database, but just through our conversations to be talking to the people that are in somebody else's database. So we're going to withdraw, and in 4 or 5 years, that 1,000-person database, if they're not working it, will be 300 names because they've all gone someplace else. So, the 10% rule really applies if they're willing to do the 4 good conversations a year, the 4 postcard type mailings a year, selecting the 10% that they can count on every year for a referral, treating them a little bit more special, which they have to do. It's a gold mine for those that work it. Now, however, we take like Lucy Ham, who out of Michigan.
Yeah.
280 transactions a year, 7,000 names in the database. She talks to 25 every day. I mean, and here's a 30-year veteran that is in a conversation like you and I are having every day with 25 people, and it results in 275 transactions. But it's 30 years of continuous professional hard work. So it's not a magic answer, but it's a long-term solution to anybody's business growing.
Yeah, and really, I agree with that 100%. I still talk about the 10% rule. I think it's very accurate. When you have those, make sure you keep in touch with them at least 4 times a year. And we have such great tools here for them. We have these automatic newsletters that go out that are incredible. We have something called Market Watch, where if you're in my CRM, I can set you up on an instant CMA once a month. And then here's the great, I call it stalker good. When they open it, it notifies you. So you call them, hey, Mike, it's Rick. I noticed you opened up and look at that house on Smith Street. What's going on? How can I help you? People go, that's creepy. I go, no, it'd only be creepy if you said, and by the way, I really like your outfit today. That would be creepy because it's over the phone. But no, when you call them and you should, when people love to see that you're proactive only when they're thinking about buying or selling. I don't know if you know this, or if you remember, but one of the lines I used to do when I started a prospecting school, when I was teaching over there on, at your headquarters, was I'd go like this. All right, who's looking for people who aren't moving? Right? Oh, you're not looking for people who aren't moving. So what they say really doesn't matter. So let's get on the phone. Right? So people, they have to understand you're looking for people who are moving, and people who are moving react different than anybody else.
That's right. And there's always people willing to buy and sell. And our job is to find them. Somebody just asked me, Rick, last week, a fun question. They said, do you still believe in the wait, buy, and earn? which are those three key words. I can wait for business to find me.
Yeah.
That's tough. But I can do, 4 or 5 deals a year, that method. Buying business, advertising, marketing, Google ads, buying off the internet, etc. And that will get me business, or I can go find it. Most people take options A and B because the rejection is so little compared to option C. But option C is where all the money is. And that's what you and I have always specialized in.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because when I go in, we have a real estate school here too, and we obviously recruit from our own real estate school. We make it easier for them to join, and I tell them that that NAR, National Association of Realtors, they say that I tell them, I say, I'm not telling you this to depress you. I'm telling you I would want to know this if I was in your shoes right now, and that is that I think it's actually only 12% of you will be doing this in 18 months. So,
That's right.
And if you wait for business, like you just said, you'll be part. Now, people always go, well, that's depressing. Well, only if you're focusing on the 88%. If you're focusing on the 12%, then what are they doing? Let me figure out what's going on with them, right? So,
I'll never forget 20 years ago doing a program in Florida, and the instructor that had hired me to come and speak for their company was also an NAR instructor for one of their programs. And she introduced me as saying, Mike is not a big believer in non-active realtors. And I said, oh, I don't understand. She goes, well, NAR stands for non-active realtors. And that's where that expression came about. But you're right. It's only going to be a percentage of the new licensees that succeed that understand what our conversation is.
yeah, and that isn't even really a real estate rule. Yeah, I did a little podcast a couple years ago. I called it Rewriting the Pareto Principle. Because, and you've been talking about this for years too, it's not really an 80-20 rule anymore. It's really a 90-10 rule. And sometimes it might even be 92-8, depending on where you are, because if in every one of our offices, I see all the numbers. I mean, and I tell them this when I go to California, Arizona, or stay here in Nevada, is that if you look at the numbers in the office, 10% of the people are doing 90% of the business. MLS, same thing. Okay, so it's not really a real estate law because in this business, 10% of companies make it, the other ones don't. So it's really about, so you have to have a plan, you've got to be proactive, you've got to make good decisions. And like you're talking about, the stuff that we're talking about here, being proactive, calling people, door knock, it doesn't cost any money other than your time. It's the best return on investment ever.
I've always said, Rick, they're going to be doing something 6 to 8 hours a day, either in the office or at their home regarding real estate. Why not do something that can get you a return on your investment?
Right.
And that's what it comes down to. And that's what you and I have been preaching for years.
That's why FSBOs are so important, because you go look at a house. It's a house you have a chance to list, and that's what your job is, to list property and to work with people that want to. So, okay. So if we mentioned expired, we mentioned a state of the real estate economy, what about tips for, so how about some, I know they're similar, but what about some tips for new people trying to come out of the gate? What should they be thinking about this, with everything going on?
I did a webinar last week for an organization, and all they had was 100 new licensees. And it was very interesting because that's not something you and I would normally be heavily involved in, because we get a good, and I said to this group, as new licensees, I want you, number one, to understand you've got to start organizing and creating a database. And everybody has at least 100 names they can put in that database. A brand new licensee, neighbors, friends, relatives, friends of your children's, their parents, the person that you buy your groceries from, the dry cleaners, the person that sold you your insurance. These are all names in your database. Number two, you have to start previewing property, and you can do it online. But you got to preview property every day for 30 to 40 minutes to an hour to know prices, neighborhoods, types of homes, what's selling, what's not. Number three, as much as they hate it, they have to start an organized prospecting program for themselves. They've got to find a way to start communicating to 10 to 20 to 30 people a day about the industry we're involved in. And then number four, they got to take the scripts that you and I offer, and they got to start practicing because the old joke is in Los Angeles, if you want to find a great actor, say, hey, waiter, okay? And when they're not waiting, they're practicing their scripts, because that's what they do. Here we have a new football team coming to town, which is exciting for people like you and I. All they do is practice.
Yeah.
So these new licensees, They've got to build a database. Okay, they've got to preview property. They've got to get the scripts down. They've got to understand that this is a scripted-oriented business. And as long as they do these four things, they're going to make it as long as they have the desire.
Yeah, and the key is patience, because it does take a while to get
Oh,
into
yeah.
the groove. It's like you used to teach us, if you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor, my son just graduated from UConn. He's going back to UConn. He got accepted to UConn Law, my oldest. So he's going, and my second one just, go
You
ahead.
have to stop. Your son I've known your son since he was this big.
Yeah, the
He
one
just
that,
graduated.
yeah, I still have a picture when I brought him to a productivity, what back then it was called the 100 plus retreat. That's how long ago it was. Remember those days?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
his first, he was standing on the bridge at the Disneyland. I still have that picture. That was a really good picture. Yeah. He's 24. He just graduated a year ago. He took a year. He got a great job at the Hartford, which is in Hartford, Connecticut. And he now he's going back to UConn Law, accepted, and he's doing really well. And my second just graduated from UConn too. So my youngest is in high school, and I've got four, and they're a full-time job. Yes.
So I will say this, you'll get a kick out of this. My son, Tom, who almost all these viewers would know, I was with he and his wife over this past weekend, and in August, my son, Tom, turns 50.
Yeah.
I mean, and, I can remember doing seminars where I bring Tom and Matt on the stage, and they were 2 and 3 years old.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure glad that you and I have not aged.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. I remember your 50th birthday party in the desert.
Yes.
I don't know. No. Whenever I think of the desert, I think of the year. Do you remember the year when Chuck Daly spoke and the AC went out, and it was
Yes.
like instantly like 120 inside there?
Perfect.
That's when you could still smoke inside too. Remember that? That was crazy.
Oh, man, I tell you, well, let's see. In about 18 days, I turned 75. So it's been a while since that last party. So I'm looking forward to this ending so you and I can have another party.
Yes, happy birthday, happy birthday. Yeah, I call it double nickels. I'm a half a century plus 5. All right, so cool. So any final thoughts you want to leave them with, Mike, tonight? Because we are right at 27 and a half minutes. Anything you want to leave them with today?
Well, I think the most important thing is, you and I used to always say, and we still will say, that selling real estate in volume, 50% mindset, 50% skills, 50% activities. And I've had people challenge me and say, well, that's 150%. I said, well, that's what it takes to be a very solid producer. But today, and you and I have already discussed it, is probably 90% mindset and 10% skills and activities. So if anything we can do to help an agent strengthen their mindset is going to benefit them not only today, but in the future, not only in their business, but in their personal life. And, these are troubling times we were experiencing all over the world with this pandemic and the social unrest that we're experiencing. Watch, we're going to get through all this.
Yeah.
But the key is we got to remember that the real problems take place up here more than any place else. So I'm just wishing the best health and safety for all of your guests and all of your agents, and most importantly, strengthen the mindset so the rest of what they do is going to be better.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I remember when when I started on my reading, and I got that from you. Reading, I used to read 5-6 books a month. Now you really have no excuse, because every book that Think and Grow Rich, the new Psycho-Cybernetics, Manifest Your Destiny. I mean, Reinvented the Body, Resurrecting the Soul. All these books that we're talking about, all these great business books, they're all on YouTube for free.
That's right.
You have you work out and you listen to audiobooks, and then the rest of the day goes incredibly well. It's not complicated. Well, Mike, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm glad we got together, and I hope all of us have a better day and a better week and a better month.
All right.
See you very soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.